Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a horror film, The Old Ways. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. In the middle of a forest at Veracruz, Mexico, a grandma is performing a native exorcism ritual to a woman. The woman then tells her daughter not to be afraid. She also assures her daughter that everything will be fine. As she tries to gently hold her daughter's hand, she releases a demonic scream that freaks the shit out of her daughter. Several years after, an American investigative journalist with a Mexican origin, Christina, comes back to her hometown Veracruz to do some fieldwork. It seems that the locals hold her as a captive. She appears to be locked up in a room while her hands are tied up and her face is covered by a sack. A local man, Mr. Whitebeard, walks in and removes her sack, revealing her beautiful face. He then asks her what she is doing on La Boca, which seems to be a forbidden place. She reveals that she is making a story about the culture and traditions of the local tribes at the said place. As she thinks that the locals kidnapped her for ransom, she tries to offer money to Mr. Whitebeard. But he just ignores her while he continues spraying holy water at the place and leaves soon after. As Christina observes the signs on the wall, the man's old mother, grandma for short, suddenly walks in. The other eye of grandma appears to be completely white. She uses the white eye to observe Christina's face. After observing, she declares to Mr. Whitebeard that Christina has a demon inside her. He then forces Christina to drink a massive amount of milk. Christina gags as she cannot handle Mr. Whitebeard's milk anymore. Shortly after, Mr. Whitebeard walks out of there, while his milk is still dripping out of Christina's mouth. She is left confused as she wonders why they kidnapped her. That night, she repeatedly smashes her chains with a huge block, trying to escape from it. The scene then flashes back to her walking in the middle of the forest. There she entered a cave that seemed to be the mouth of a monster with massive sharp teeth. This cave appears to be the forbidden place, La Boca. As she slowly surveyed the cave with her flashlight, she found a strange creature that looked like a demon, hiding behind the stones. Instantly, it appeared in front of her, making her scream. Back at present, she wakes up hearing strange screams. The following day, her cousin Miranda, who happens to be a local, comes to visit her. Miranda asks her why she went to the forbidden cave. It turns out that Miranda already warned her not to go there, but she insists that it is part of her work. She begs Miranda to help her to get out of there. But Miranda explains to her that she cannot leave, since there is a demon found inside her. This makes her laugh because she is not a believer in the supernatural things believed by the locals. She then just requests to have her bag and takes her camera out of it. Then she shows them the photo she has taken from the cave, and she insists that there is no demon to be seen from there. Shortly after, Miranda talks with Mr. Whitebeard outside. So Christina quickly calls for help from her boss using the phone. As she shares her location with her boss, Mr. Whitebeard comes outside and takes away her phone. Before leaving, Miranda informs her that Grandma will conduct the first exorcism ritual for her tomorrow. That night, she tries to ask for help from a seemingly curious child who passes by to look at her. But the child just runs away. Shortly after, as she takes out syringes that she uses to take drugs, it turns out that she lived a problematic life before deciding to go back to her hometown. It is possible that she resorts to drugs as a coping mechanism from a problematic life she lived in. After injecting the drugs into her body, she experiences an ecstatic moment. When she wakes up the following day, she finds herself tied up on a table, while Grandma with Mr. Whitebeard is having a preparatory moment for the ritual. Miranda explains that a demon came to her last night, and this ritual would reveal the demon's names. Grandma puts red paint on her, while Grandma warns her that soon after, she will start to see things. After that, they leave Christina alone in the room as a part of the ritual. As she mocks the ritual, two snakes suddenly enter the window to pay her a visit. The first snake slowly crawls at her arms, while the other snake crawls through her legs, following her hormone smell. At this moment, she is shaking in terror. Mr. Whitebeard suddenly appears to catch the snakes, while Grandma takes a red paint out of her stomach to mark the snake sign at the wall. After the ritual, she removes the paint from her body. Miranda comes to visit her. She then asks Miranda why she believes in the native rituals despite graduating from a university. In response, Miranda says the demon will show itself and abruptly walks out of there. Later, after taking drugs, she starts to hallucinate about creepy things. Suddenly, her blanket flies away while the door moves. Strangely enough, the blanket on the floor starts to have blood. As she proceeds to check the thing under the blanket, It reveals a bloody dead chicken, which freaks the shit out of her. The following day, Miranda brings books about demons in her room to convince her that they are real, but she insists the books are not enough as a piece of evidence. Miranda then mentions her mother. It turns out that she witnessed her mother's demonic possession. In fact, she is the child from the first scene who witnessed the demonic possession of her mother. Later at night, when she keenly reads the book, a powerful demon intrigues her. The next day, she looks at the window where she sees the curious child again. Then Miranda arrives to give her puppet protection. Miranda then asks her the real reason why she comes to the cave, despite a warning that she could possibly die there. It turns out Miranda believes that she has a secret reason for coming to the cave, but she refuses to reveal the reason. Later, they tie her again to a table, as Grandma is about to perform a ritual. Grandma slowly magically enters her hand at her greasy stomach without cutting it. Grandma then grabs a sticky ball of blood out of her stomach. The ball of blood contains a set of a demon's teeth. Grandma slowly puts her hands again at her greasy stomach, but this time Grandma goes deeper. She then screams in pain. As Grandma takes out her hands, she pulls a smelly snake out of her. It tries to resist, so Mr. Whitebeard helps to pull it out, but it manages to come back inside her. As the ritual ends, they put a mark on the teeth sign on the wall. After that, Miranda comes to visit her, as she appears to be in bad condition due to the ritual. But she is furious at Miranda, since she already figures out that Miranda brings her to Grandma to be exorcised. She then viciously attacks Miranda, but she fails due to the chains. Miranda then walks out, terrified by her behavior. That night, she takes drugs again. Shortly after, she notices that the puppet is moving. She then throws an object at it, making it disappear. A rat suddenly walks out of there. At this moment, her supernatural experience becomes questionable, as she has just taken drugs. This means that everything strange she sees might be a product of her hallucination as an effect of the drugs. Meanwhile, as the rat crawls down the floor, a creepy hand instantly splatters it, making her release a wild scream. Mr. Whitebeard quickly responds and jingles his bell to sway away bad spirits. But she suddenly strangles him with a wire. He tries his best to resist. When he falls to the ground, she seizes this moment to take the key out of his pocket. She then uses the key to escape from the chains. However, when she walks out of the door, an invisible barrier prevents her from coming out. Suddenly, her mouth releases a long strand of smelly hair. She then pulls it to completely remove it out of her mouth. Grandma comes there to smell the smelly hair. Shortly after, Grandma brings her to the dining table to let her drink milk, which is used to contain the demonic powers. This time she starts to have a soft heart for Grandma. She also apologizes to Mr. Whitebeard for what she did earlier. They then play a board game. Mr. Whitebeard reveals that his father died due to demonic possession. She then says that someone needs to fight these demons. In response, he declares that the old ways will die as Grandma dies, implying that the traditional rituals and beliefs will end on Grandma's death. The following day, she becomes interested in the culture and tradition of her hometown. She keenly reads books about demons and rituals. A strong demon suddenly catches her attention. She proceeds to tell Grandma and Mr. Whitebeard about it. She says that she wants to take out the strong demon and defeat it. He then warns that it is quite risky since the demon is extremely dangerous. Later, she documents her story about her hometown. She reveals that she decided to come back to her hometown to die. It turns out that she comes to the cave just to commit suicide. Apparently, she wants to die in the darkness where no one can find her. She then expresses her gratitude to Miranda, Grandma, and Mr. Whitebeard, thinking that they are the reason she survived. She says that they completely understand her sadness and pain, and they genuinely accept her. After that, Grandma prepares her for the exorcism ritual that would take away the strong demon from her. Before the ritual starts, they put her in a crossing position on the ground. Grandma hammers down nails on the triangle. Christina's hands then mysteriously bleed, making her scream in pain. As Grandma hammers down the last nail, it seems like her feet are nailed on the ground. It seems like Grandma crucified her through the ritual. Shortly after, Grandma blows the death whistle, making her body float. But the nails from earlier prevent her body from completely floating. At the same time, she is releasing a demonic scream. She then gains a vision of the demon at the cave. There, she sees the curious child from earlier hiding at the stone. It turns out that the curious child is also present during the demonic possession of her mother. As she proceeds to find the curious child in the dark cave, a demon instantly scratches her eyes. She then abruptly wakes up while a scratch wound appears on her eyes. Suddenly, the curious child appears in front of her. It appears that the curious child is a demon, as it shows its creepy teeth before running away. The demon lets them experience its power, as the ground starts to shake while a filthy object falls down. Also, the candle smoke starts to fill the place. Grandma then performs an ultimate ritual to cast out the demon. Grandma emotionally looks back at Mr. Whitebeard, before using all of their strength against the demon. Suddenly, a heart appears at Grandma's staff. Grandma tightly holds it while declaring to cast out the demon. The declaration then releases a massive force around the area. The following day, Christina wakes up in good condition while she tries to sense her surroundings. She then put markings on the strong demon sign on the wall. Meanwhile, Mr. Whitebeard prepares Grandma's dead body for burial. Mr. Whitebeard then declares that the old ways die with Grandma's death. It turns out that Grandma sacrificed herself to cast out the demon from Christina. Shortly after, Mr. Whitebeard gives Grandma a proper burial, as he puts a cross on Grandma's burial site. Meanwhile, Christina and Miranda are having a drink together. Christina reveals to Miranda that she is planning to go back to America, rather than staying there. Suddenly, Christina's worried boss calls her. She then walks out of the room. On the phone, she instructs her boss to go to the village. As she comes back, she notices that Miranda is acting weirdly. She realizes that the demon is now inside Miranda. It turns out that Grandma only casted out the demon and did not destroy it completely. Christina then realizes that there is no one who can stop the demon at this moment. Miranda suggests that Christina can stop it by performing the old ways. But Christina is hesitant, thinking she does not have any experience with the old ways. Suddenly, Grandma's spirit appears in front of her. Grandma's spirit then leads her towards the tools used to fight demons. At this moment, it appears that Grandma is passing the old ways of fighting demons towards her. She then accepts the mission and decides to perform the exorcism ritual on Miranda. Later, she puts paint on her face before she starts. Shortly after, she performs the ritual on Miranda. But the possessed Miranda suddenly attacks her. She then kicks Miranda's ass and proceeds to nail Miranda's ass on the ground using the triangle. As Miranda gets nailed down and cannot move, she proceeds to declare the exorcism prayer. Suddenly, the demonic force removes the nail from the triangle. Miranda then manages to stand up from the ground. In response, Christina bravely confronts the demon inside Miranda. She then intently looks at Miranda's eye, where she sees the demon through it. So she declares that she can see the demon, which magically casts out the demon out of Miranda. They hug each other with a feeling of relief. Suddenly, Christina senses another demon lurking around. She then removes her eye patch, which reveals her white eye. The demon also shows its might by releasing a strong force that throws Miranda's ass out of there. In response, Christina blows the death whistle that drives away the strong demon. They then have the chance to escape out of there, but Christina decides to end the strong demon now. She then bravely confronts the strong demon. In response, the strong demon reveals its ugly face, trying to terrorize her. So she instantly takes its heart out of its smelly body. As the strong demon tries to fight back, Miranda stabs its heart. The strong demon then instantly burns to nothing. They then reunite with a feeling of relief. The movie ends where Christina's boss is kidnapped by the locals, believing that he is possessed by the demon. To his surprise, Christina walks in as the new demon slayer who practices the old ways. She then finds a demon inside him as she checks his eye. In the end, she offers him milk, while the demon abruptly releases a wild scream. This is Daniel's CC Moody channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.